Did you know I met Lemmy once?
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
At House of Blues in L.A. My band was opening up for Slash in his Snake Pit. What was it called back then?
I don't know.
Miles Kennedy was singing with Slash. I don't remember what the band was called, but Lemmy was there.
Nice.
And I had my Rickenbacker with me, and I was walking through the backstage, and I had it with me, and I stopped him, and I was just like, Lemmy, I play a Rickenbacker too. And he was like, cool. I'm like, can I take a picture with you? So nerdy. But then like later my cousin, he's up on the balcony and he bummed a smoke from Lemmy, which was way cooler.
Whoa.
So he shared a cigarette with Lemmy, which was
I think that's cooler.
Yeah, a lot cooler than like I'm smiling in the picture too, which
Yeah.
is like rule number one.
And you're like this?
Like, don't,
You're not even doing the
no,
right.
It might have even just been like the point.
You're
you
not
know?
even doing like the right like metal. You're doing like the I love you.
Yeah, you're not supposed to smile when you meet your idols.
I do it all the time, man. You just do, you know, like, I don't know.
You can't help it.
I feel like there's too many rules.
All right, I gotta snake by you. This is the only way to get in there.
Yeah.
Suck it in. All right.
So, all right. Now that we're all seated, so talk a little bit more about this Lemmy experience.
Yes. So
I think everyone, like at least our age, has or should have, hopefully, some kind of Lemmy story.
yeah, it was actually a really interesting week for me. I was in a band at the time called Bad City. We had recorded an album here in Chicago with Johnny K. At his studio down on the South Side before that got shut down, and we were on our second tour as this band. Our first tour was with the Smashing Pumpkins, which was like, how could you ask for a better?
Way to humble brag, bud.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go there, but
no, that's
one
fucking
of my
awesome.
one of my favorite bands of all time. We were like incredibly lucky. We actually got that tour by writing a letter to Billy, and we're like, hey, we're this new band from Chicago. We'd love to tour with you.
What year was this?
This was like 2010, maybe 2009.
And you wrote a
Not
letter.
terribly long ago.
No,
But
not
you
that
wrote
long ago.
a handwritten. Did you send it by carrier pigeon?
I don't remember how we got it to him. I think our manager might have taken care of that.
That's pretty awesome, man.
But yeah, so we did that, and then somehow that led to a tour with Slash, and we ended up doing 2 shows in LA at the House of Blues, and it was just like a star-studded affair. Billy Gibbons was there, Lemmy was there, and so I ran into Lemmy in the halls of the House of Blues, holding my Rickenbacker. I may or may not have planned that out that way, and got a picture with him, which was really cool. Actually,
it's awesome.
Not humble bragging, but I was wearing a jacket at the time that had some like military paraphernalia on it, and he's a big World War II buff and collected a lot of Nazi memorabilia and stuff like that,
which is a bummer.
Kind of a bummer. I know you can't. I mean, what did he say? Like the bad guys always dressed cooler or whatever. He had a point there, but I didn't realize it that I had these like, I don't know what they're called, like leaflets or something on my collar, and he's like, do you know what those are? And I'm like, no, I just bought them at like a thrift store or something, and he told me that they were like German Air Force badges or something.
The Lufthansa?
And so he thought I knew.
You took them off.
He's like, oh, do you collect that stuff too? I'm like, not really, but he got into it because he was so passionate about that stuff. He actually gave me his phone number and invited me to come to his apartment like a couple days. He's like, if you come over, I'll give you some more stuff for your jacket. So I called. Of course, I like waited like a day and a half, and I called. He didn't pick up, but his voicemail, I still remember it exactly. It would, the phone rang a few times, and then you hear boop, and then it goes, "You're all sons of bitches," and that was it. That was it. And then I don't even think I left a message. I just like hung up and freaked out a little bit.
There's probably like dozens of those a day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Dude, you like way undersold that story.
I don't know. It was a life changer for sure, though.
Well, that's by far I think. I mean, I'm just assuming. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably the coolest Lemmy story we've got at the table.
I mean, it's the coolest one ever told on this podcast for sure.
Oh yeah, good one.
Isn't this the first episode though?
Yeah.
Shut up, man.
Speaking of which, this is very special, right? Because like this is the
inaugural.
Yeah, I'm Jody, and this is
Mark.
Yeah, the bass dad over there.
I have to say this though. I know that like I've been calling myself that, but that's not. It's like one of those things where it's like, you can call me Falcon now. Like, I didn't give myself that nickname. Like, that was Doug Darkglass and Franco. I can't remember his last name. He's super sweet. They work for Doug Castro from Darkglass and Franco from Darkglass. They called me Bass Dad, and then it morphed into Bass Poppy and stuff. And I was like, ooh, that feels good. That feels right.
How is it being a dad, by the way?
Fucking awesome.
You like it? How old's your boy now?
He's 4.
4.
He's 4. Yeah. He's awesome. He's like super into music right now. Like, it's all about like Moana. Yeah. The Moana soundtrack, which is awesome. It's a great soundtrack. Who knew Dwayne Johnson could sing? You know, it's good.
All right. I'm not familiar. I know about this much about Moana. And that, whatever I've seen on the.
Well, what would you like to know?
Not much. I'm good. I've less than I already know.
Do you know who Lin-Manuel Miranda is?
Yes.
Okay, so he did a lot of the soundtrack as well. Okay. He also sings on it, which is especially like when the first time I saw it, I'm like, is this that dude from Hamilton? Sounds a lot like him. This sounds like his style too. And then like I see it in the credits, and I was like, oh,
that's the dude,
Alexander Hamilton.
Right. Nice.
Do you have kids too?
I do not.
No, I'm afraid. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit afraid to go down that route.
That's cool.
Yeah, not like I want to, but
yeah,
it's scary.
You know, it's just one of those things where like some people know right away that they don't want to. There's some people who like aren't really sure if they want to. I found that. Like, I always thought that I wanted to. Yeah. And then when presented with the information that I was going to be a dad, I, like, cemented that I knew that I wanted to. Like, it was just like, oh, yeah, this much like being the bass dad.
Right.
It just made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, sometimes people don't have that. And that's okay. You know? Like, it's just one of those things, like, we don't need more fucking people. You know what I mean? Like, we got plenty of them.
That's true.
A lot of assholes on this planet.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, have we introduced who's with us?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh no. So, I guess
like people who may be listening have no idea who the third voice is.
I am Jake Serek of Serek Basses here in Chicago, Illinois, as Mark so elegantly put it earlier.
We were just rocking out on a couple of your instruments.
Yeah.
We'll post some videos of that too.
Sounded pretty good.
So like what got you? I know, like I read a little bit about your stuff, and I know you started at Lakland.
Yes.
Back in the Dan Lakland days.
Exactly. Right before he sold the company to the Piricellos, I was there for about maybe a year and a half to 2 years, just as a lowly intern. I was there maybe like once a week throughout that time.
Interns are not lowly. They're like the lifeblood. Seriously. Yeah. Like I don't piss on the interns because you never know.
Right.
I think I did some okay work there. I wrote Dan an email out of the blue. I had graduated college. I was looking for a job. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew that I liked, I've been playing bass for, at that point, probably about 7 or 8 years, and I had been tinkering with my instruments throughout and been sort of a collector. So I thought maybe that would be kind of a fun thing to try out. So Dan said, come on in. I said, I'll sweep the floors. I'll do whatever. And then the shop supervisor there at the time, Kevin Caton, was like, no, we're going to put you to work right away. You'll start assembling instruments, installing pickups, all that kind of stuff. So it was cool because I kind of hit the ground running. I built my first scratch build there, which was a Gibson Grabber replica with a Hammond Dark Star, a single Hammond Dark Star in the middle.
Yes.
With the Lakland Bridge. I still have that bass. It still plays great, actually. So I actually owe a lot to Kevin Caton, if he is listening to this podcast. He taught me a lot. And then from there, I ended up touring around for a little bit. Then when I came back home,
meeting Lemmy,
all that. I got more stories.
Yeah, I definitely.
If you guys want me to go
like
there,
some smashing
I have some more
Billy stories.
idol meeting stories.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are always fun.
Yeah, I'll go there real quick. My favorite bass player of all time is Chris Squire.
Yeah,
okay.
And rest in peace. And by the way, let's do a quick cheers to Bass Nerds
podcast,
Lemmy, Chris Squire,
all our fallen heroes.
I'm not going to pour this out. This is good bourbon.
It's good. So that same week that I was in LA that I met Lemmy, I also met Chris Squire. I say met very loosely. We were having some drinks at the Rainbow Bar and Grill and on Sunset there, and he walked in with his family and sat in one of the booths. And it was right about the time that we were finishing up and we were getting ready to leave. And I was like, guys, do you know who that is?
That's my phone going.
Can
you grab that real quick for me? If that's, I think it's sitting right next to the plate.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll shut that off.
I can get to it.
Lemmy's calling
Chris.
from the grave.
Ed.
Sorry, Ed. I'm gonna shut my phone off.
Sorry, Ed.
Sorry about that.
Wow.
We're learning. This is our first episode.
All good, all good.
You know what? Actually, where's my? Yes, you. I'm gonna have this little guy. I'll put my phone on there. Maybe
Perfect.
I'll do a little live streaming.
So where were we?
Okay, so I was at the Rainbow in LA with my band.
Not to be confused with Rainbow Club here in
Chicago.
Chicago,
Right.
which is I think it's my favorite bar.
Equally like as scummy of a place, though. I think. Maybe,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if it has as much history.
It's it's a legendary bar for
I've
sure.
heard
Yeah,
the story.
yeah.
Very important place.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So Chris Squire comes in with his family and sits down for dinner. I think I was the only one at our table that knew who he was, but I was like freaking out. My friends were like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Like, "Don't you see who just walked in?" They're like, "No, who's that old fat guy?" Like,
why is he wearing a cape?
yeah. I'm like, that's Chris fucking Squire. And I'm like, I gotta go say something. Like, I know this isn't the right place. Like, he's there with his family. But so on our way out, me and my cousin Sean, who he's actually the one who turned me on to Yes in the first place. So he was kind of freaking out once he learned who it was too.
Yeah.
We went over and I just kind of like sidled up to the table and I was like, Mr. Squire, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to let you know that you're my favorite bass player of all time. Thank you for what you do. And he kind of just looked at me and like nodded. I don't even think he said anything. He was just like, okay. He wasn't like a dick about it, but it was like clearly I was disturbing him and his family having
Right.
dinner. So I was like, okay. And I just, took the cue and left. But
Right.
yeah, that was a fun moment.
Dude,
as well. Yeah.
that's awesome.
So back to Chicago. So I got a job after Lakland. And touring. I came back and I worked for Third Coast Guitar Repair for a couple years, and that really sort of like solidified the rest of my building knowledge. I think anyone who wants to learn how to build a guitar should learn how to repair them first. You get your hands on so many different instruments. You really see all the different building styles, what works, what doesn't. It's really interesting to see the patterns, like what kind of instruments are coming back with what kind of problems over and over again, because
Yeah.
that kind of allows you to think like, well, I'm not going to do it like that, and kind of future-proof your own instruments.
Right.
So, yeah, that was really valuable experience. And then fast forward a couple of years, I was installing kitchen and cabinetry and had access to a wood shop, and I just started building my own instruments and eventually took the plunge. Kevin Caton from Lakland, who was no longer working for Lakland anymore, he started a repair shop and was building acoustic guitars on the side. And he actually reached out to me and said, hey, I want to give the acoustic guitar building thing a go. Do you want to go in on a wood shop with me? So we split a wood shop for about a year and a half, and then eventually kind of just went our own ways, and now I have my own shop. So
Nice.
yeah.
Are
That's
you
awesome.
full time?
Full time. I took the plunge in like maybe 2000. What year is it right now? 19. Like 20. The end of 2016. So we've got like 3.5 years full time under my belt right now. It's myself and I have a full time employee named Atticus at the shop.
Which I've met.
Yeah.
British fellow, right?
No, that's Saul. And
Nope,
So
Saul.
Saul's the apprentice.
Sorry.
It's cool. He's been with us for close to a year. He'll be going back to the UK in a few months after the new year, and then Atticus has been with me for over a couple years, but full time for about a year, maybe a year and some change.
Nice.
So yeah, it's really,
Awesome.
It's really
And
cool. Yeah.
are you building them from zero to? I mean, you're like cutting your own bodies,
Yeah,
necks, everything.
yeah. We have a small CNC machine we employ for doing like body routing and stuff like that, just to keep things accurate and repeatable. But yeah, we're raw lumber. Chopping it up, making the bodies, carving all the necks by hand. That's something that I'll never kind of sway on. I don't want to ever CNC our necks. Like we'll rough route them with a big hefty shaper bit just to hog off most of the material.
Right.
But I always fine tune the carving with rasps and files and grits and all that, because there's something about just like the handmade feel of a neck. Like it's not that it's imperfect, but there's just something
Human.
Yeah. There's something human about it that you can definitely feel, I think. So
Yeah.
Right. And you're wrapping your own, winding your own.
yeah,
pickups.
we have a little pickup winder at the shop, which has been a lot of fun experimenting with. I don't claim to know a ton about the science of pickups, but I know what I like and I know what tone that I'm after, and it's kind of an ever changing process, but I think we've nailed down some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah,
with the B90.
sure.
And,
I mean, that's like the history of our favorite builders. You know, like the iconic builders out there. A lot of that, especially on the early stages of things, like that's part of the innovation and the fun. Like, how can we make this sound cooler? How can we make this sound more pleasing and stuff? And sometimes you just accidentally step onto something really great. Sometimes you have a plan and you go for it, and it either does exactly what you want or it just fucking fails. But it's part of that whole process that makes it more exciting. I would imagine. Yeah, it's just like, you know, being in a band.
Yeah, I think with the pickups too, part of the decision to start making our own was for aesthetic reasons. I really like the look of a dog ear P90 pickup, and it doesn't exist for bass. I'm like, why can't we try that? And similarly with the Serek singles, like it's a humbucker sized pickup, which there are a few of those for bass, but most of them are like soap bar, like an EMG HZ style pickup or something like that. So I just really like the look of exposed pull pieces. I like chrome, like a lot of chrome, like the Bisonic's one of the coolest looking pickups, just because of that massive chrome surround that it has, you know.
Yeah, the Phil Lesh fan in me is just like, that's what Daddy likes.
I want to talk to Curtis Novak about making a 5-string Bisonic, because you can't make it with the existing hardware because it's not wide enough. Yeah. But if we could find some investment, maybe we could get some tooling made up. And anyone out there?
Wink, wink. Huh? For those of you just listening, I'm winking really hard.
It sounds like you have a good history of just writing letters to people.
Yeah, exactly. Just write them a letter.
There we go.
You know, there's something to go back to the letter for a second. Yeah. I know I made fun of it, but like, it's so much more personal. Yeah. You took the time to write it down, to write your thoughts, and like, you know, like the reader gets to like have a little like insight to who you are as a person, not just based on the writing, but like the actual penmanship. Like, is this person very nervous writing this letter or whatever? Like, you could probably see that, you know, are they an angry person, etc.
Yeah, there's something to that. Like, side note, I'm in like real estate and flipping houses and stuff like that, and like you'll see those signs on the side of the road that say like, "I'll buy your house cash." Blah, blah, blah. Noticed
that's you, isn't it? No,
I haven't put any of those out there, but 9 out of 10 of them are handwritten for a reason, because they say that you get a bigger return on your calls if you handwrite stuff. Same with like, if I saw a house that I wanted to buy, instead of like sending them an email or typing a letter, you handwrite a little thing like, "Hey, I'm interested in buying your property." Put it in the mail, or put it in their mailbox. You're more likely to get a response from that than you are from like spending money on professionally made signs to put on the corner and tape them up. So I definitely think like the handwritten. I've used it myself when I'm like typically I'm working on a roof or something in a neighborhood, and I'll drive around a few blocks, see what roofs are in bad shape, and I handwrite notes. Like, "Hey, I see your roof is rough. It'll cost X. Call me. I'll do it. Whatever." And I have had some callbacks, but I think like that little bit of personal touch goes a long way.
It totally does, man.
I should start including little like postcards with the basses that I ship out or something.
Yeah, dude, that's a great idea.
Bathroom selfie and a handwritten note.
And just like hearing that like sort of story like makes me want to hire you as to do my landlord's roof.
I'm licensed. I'm certified. I'm insured. I'm all those things. But yeah.
I think I'm the only one sitting here who's not a very particularly handy person, and like I've found out that it's not because I can't do it, it's because I've never done it. And Chicago Parks District has a woodworking class that they do every season out of like a few parks that have like the woodcraft areas. And so I go to Horner Park. I've been going there for the past few weeks now, working with this guy Eric. He's old school. He's no bullshit at all, but he's very like, it's great because he just like allows you to problem solve and stuff. And I made my first project was just like one of those cutting boards and cheese boards. And what I did is, you know, like I put a route in all of them that you can actually like stand. It's on an angle, and you can stand an iPad.
Oh yeah.
Or like some sort of tablet device and stuff. So you can like on the cutting board, you can like, you know, you can have it on there and follow a recipe or watch The Office or something like that, you know.
Splatter tomato guts all over your iPad.
Exactly. That's
nice.
Didn't think of that.
You're a dad now, so you need to know some woodworking skills.
I'm quite proud of that first go, and it didn't take me as long as I thought it would. And now that like that's the thing, like I'm surrounded by all these builders and like these engineers and stuff, so it's just like I know what I like. I know what I'm looking for. And I know like the ultimate goal is to eventually build my own bass, not for like commercial reasons, but just to like have the satisfaction and be like, I made this piece of shit, but it's mine. It's my piece of shit.
Yes.
But yeah, I just and one of these days too, like I'd love to like just even like go into your shop and just kind of like help out and like do the Charlie work, you know, like just to kind of learn and do that stuff. But I think it's really important for every bassist to at least know how to set up their bass and like and restring and like those basic things. But to take it a step further, to really appreciate the craftsmanship, like now that I've had like a biscuit of woodworking training, I'm already looking at the instruments under a totally different microscope now. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
I think that leads into like once you realize what it takes to craft something. I mean, like I've assembled guitars by the body, by the this, whatever, and that's a certain level of like getting it all to work together. But then to like cut out your own bodies, route everything out, and then you have someone who's like, $3,000 for a bass, that's outrageous. Well, no, I put 100+ hours into this instrument and all the tooling and all the the jigs and everything it takes to make this. Like, no, I'm actually probably only making $25 an hour by the time I sell this, plus the cost of raw materials and all that. Like, it's so huge, and I see a lot. I mean, I'm sure we're all part of like the bass Facebook groups and just like the bashing on the the $3,000+ bass.
Yeah, I mean, did you see that one? Are you guys on Chicago Bass Players?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, so you saw the topic. The like, I think Jocko posted it.
Yeah,
Jocko 3X, fascinating cat, by the way.
He was in my shop not too long ago.
Gotta have him. Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah.
But
he'll be on here.
Yeah, for sure. He has to. He's got such a great story.
Right.
But like, anyway, he posted just to kind of get people's like opinions, like what are you looking for in a bass that's $1,500? What are your requirements? And like, people like, there were some people who would like comment like, I'm looking for perfection, like, or I'm looking for it to like, it needs to be perfect. And then there's some people like, you can get everything out of a $750 bass, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe it's because I worked in retail. You probably feel the same, but like, there's a different, I don't know, I have a different expectation at that price point.
Right.
Yeah.
I look for a solid workhorse. This is exactly what I said on there too. I look for a solid workhorse that like is easy to set up and retains the setup for quite a long period, and no frills, and just like something I can depend on, and some sort of communication with the person who built it. But I'm also looking for fair treatment of workers, and I think that's something that's often overlooked too. Like the people who are building the shit are being treated fairly,
right.
And that's definitely something that gets lost when you get below a specific price point, for sure. And there's some builders, I'm sure, in that $1,500 range that may not have the best practices for that, but who knows?
Well, I think it's the the most for the least, right? When you're in business, the guy who's building the bass, be it Lakland, whoever, Sadowski's making an instrument. They know that like they're likely to sell more basses at a lesser price, so you try to get as much as you can, the most labor, stretch the material as far as you can. Not to say that any of those instruments are poorly made. I mean, I think they are great instruments, but I think like you could use Fender, for instance. Like they've got so many lines, right? And certainly like their Squire line and their I don't know if they're being made in Indonesia now or wherever they're making their cheap stuff. Like let's pump them out as fast as we can. And certainly, I think we've all probably picked up a $200 bass and been blown away by it. But I think that's more the exception than the rule. I think 9 out of 10 $200 basses I pick up, I go, oh yeah, this is a $200 bass.
Yeah, but you also have the knowledge of being a retailer of a fine, like a very like amazing store for fine instruments. Right.
Yeah. So I know the difference. I've played a lot of those high end instruments, so I know the difference between Federa and a Squire. But that, at the end of the day, like, you can still rock a stage with a $200 instrument.
Absolutely.
Like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, is it stay in tune? The setup stay? Like, those are the big ones. And it's reliable. It's not going to crap out on you regularly, or you need to replace pots or pickups and stuff like that. Like, if it can maintain those things, you're in a good spot. And I think once you get to a certain threshold, like once you're in the 5,000 plus range, like, let's be honest, we're all just stroking our own egos at that point. Like the guy in the bar who's listening to you play, he can't tell the difference between your $5,000 bass and a $500 bass.
True.
Like it all sounds like a bass to him. So
unless it's one of us.
Right. So
quality and tone and price don't all correlate in the same way. Like you said, there can be a really high quality instrument that's under $1,000. I think with smaller builders, like what you're paying for is something that you can't get off the shelves. Like it's a little more unique, and it allows you to be a part of the process. So like if I wanted to just make like two basses, like the Midwestern and the Sacramento, and make them with like one style of pickup, one style of hardware, one scale length, I could just pump out probably like 3 times as many basses and make them a little bit cheaper, but it would just be the same thing over and over again. Whereas everything that we build is a little bit customized. And so I think that's where it comes in, because we're kind of experimenting, trying new things, and we're allowed to like have a dialogue with each customer and have that kind of give and take.
How's that cannoli bass going?
Oh, the cannoli, Kevin.
Yeah, that dude rules, man.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. You know, you get to like just do something fun like that, like engrave a cannoli on a bass for your buddy.
Whenever he comes to town, he'll hit me up, or like I'll reach out and like, hey, you're coming in, and we have a standing date to go over to Dinkle's across from Chicago Music Exchange and get cannolis there, because they're really fucking good. It's a German bakery who fucking slays cannolis.
That place has been around since my dad was a kid. He used to live in that neighborhood and go there when he was like 5.
Dude, it's legit.
It's insane.
Oh man, the Bismarck. Oh man,
I've never been.
My tits are vibrating right now. So they're so good, dude. All of them. The custard one, and their custard's really good. You know. Oh yeah. But yeah, back to the builder side of things. Like from your perspective, you probably get a degree of customers who have pretty high expectations based on your price point. I think, they probably want more exotic woods, set necks, etc.
Right.
You started about what, like the 2000?
Yeah, right around 2000, and we honestly don't go too high. I think.
Incredibly fair.
Right now, the most
all handmade.
Yeah.
Like
exactly. And we don't do a lot of exotic. We don't use a lot of exotic woods necessarily, and we don't like the electronics. A lot of them are made in house. We do a lot of passive electronics, so there's not a lot of expense there with all that fancy gizmos and wood and all that, because I like to keep things kind of simple. So that allows us to keep the price down a little bit as well. But yeah, we have a lot of customers who are the bass that we're building them is the first time they've ever experienced purchasing a custom instrument. So it's kind of fun to, you have to do a little bit more hand holding, but it's kind of nice to walk someone through that process too. And then they feel a little bit better that they're not spending like $5,000 to $10,000, because if it doesn't work out, they're like, well, this was reasonable, and there's, a decent aftermarket for our stuff, because there's not a lot of it out there right now. So yeah, it's cool. That's my favorite part too. And the best part about that is a lot of times customers push us into new territory. We have one customer, Drew Hondo Felder, out in Sacramento.
I know Hondo.
Yeah, great guy. He's we're building him his 4th Serek right now.
That's awesome.
And
he rips too.
3 of them were completely new instruments. So he's the first guy to ask us to build a 5-string. So he's the reason that the Midwestern 2 5-string exists, because it was something I was a little, kind of stuck on staying on 4 strings. I'm a little more traditional in that way, and I'm like, it really doesn't seem to like fit our vibe. But he's like, just try it out. We can kind of keep it under the radar. If you don't like it, you don't have to like post about it or anything. But it ended up being great, and now we build a ton of them. And then the Lincoln that you guys saw earlier with the dual singles was something that we sort of brainstormed together. He's like, I want a Lincoln, but I want something with pickups that you have never put in a Lincoln, and let's do something weird, with like switching or whatever. So we came up with the dual singles with the rotary switch.
And that rotary switch, is that something that you just picked up? Like, is it like a Switchcraft one, or
it's an Alpha, I believe, an Alpha 4-way rotary.
Cool.
Really well built, like super sturdy. I like in a rotary switch, I like that you kind of have to force it to turn a little. You
there was
need
no
a little more
variance
resistance
where it's like a little subtly wiggle.
It snaps into place, and so there's no like questioning where you are. What position you're on and all that too. And it's just a different way. I mean, we could have used like a 4-way blade or some mini switches or something like that, but
it's just more sleek. It's
and it's a little bit of an homage to like the Ripper too, with with the rotary switch and all that. So
hell yeah,
I should maybe put a chicken head knob on there next time.
Ooh yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
What are your feelings on relict instruments?
You know what? I'm okay with it. I've made my peace with it. I personally chose the route of just putting on a really thin finish so that our instruments like naturally get relics. Like I've seen a couple basses that I built like a year and a half ago. Someone sent me a picture and it's like completely worn in already, and I'm like, that's cool. You know, I think I prefer to put the battle scars on naturally. I think that just shows that the instrument's been loved and being used. But it's like it's a cool look. I think half of what makes an instrument good is just like, do you feel cool while you're playing it? Sure. I know that sounds kind of superficial, but really at the end of the day, that's like one of the first things when you walk into a store. Yeah, you don't hear the basses when you walk in, you see them, and you kind of imagine, you're like, what would I look like playing that, you know? Right. And so the relic thing, it's, you know, the vintage market is so kind of obscene these days that people can't afford all the vintage stuff that's out there. So this kind of gives them a chance to have something similar at a lower price, I guess. Yeah.
Nice. What are your thoughts, man?
I am so for it. I am a big fan. I think it, like, part of it is probably because like I worked at making music for a while in Chicago, and like we just sold a ton of custom shop, super heavy relic stuff, and I like the worn-in feel. I like the idea that, like, if you do put a nick in it, no one's going to know. You know, I've definitely had a few instruments in my life that were, like, you know, mint, super, like, you know, high-end pieces that, like, I'm almost afraid to play, you know, because I'm like, well, if this isn't necessarily the one that I'm going to keep forever, I don't want to, like, ding it up, because obviously resale value is a thing. And then you always, like, you feel it when you ding it, you know? So I've always liked, especially like, I'm a huge fan of like worn necks. Like I like that smooth, non-finish, like really worn in neck. And we did a lot of like there's still like some of the custom shops, like Strats and master built stuff is in that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 range. So they're not cheap. I mean, you can certainly they got that Road Worn series line, which is a bit more affordable, Mexican made stuff. But like we would do like a sunburst, or like say a red over a sunburst. So like you got a red paint and it's worn, and you see the sunburst underneath it, because apparently back in the day Fender would just take a body that was already painted and repaint it for whatever order they had to fulfill. So I'm a huge fan of it. And I know there's like a lot of people really hate, like, I would never spend that kind of money on a that's beat up, you know.
But you got to get inside the mind of the builder who's doing that, and like a lot of builders are doing that for the reason that you pointed out already, is that you have this expensive, or not, just an instrument that you spent your hard-earned money on, and you're afraid of playing it, and that's kind of a tragedy, you know. And
I've always gotten rid of those instruments.
And Dennis Fano was the one of like Fano. He was a Fano Guitars, and now he's doing Novo Guitars, which are phenomenal. I can't wait till he does a bass.
Is he a part of like the Rialto Guitars or Revolta Guitars?
Well, Fano, so when he sold the company, that I think it was. I think it's from Fano. It might actually be under Dennis's name. I'm not sure. But either way, like that was his philosophy, is that like why spend all this money on this thing that you love playing and not have the ability to go and play it? So not just from a functional standpoint, like the worn neck and how that feels, and then the aesthetic choice that you're going with, but just the comfort in knowing that you can fucking tear into that thing and not worry about it. So I mean, you still have to worry about the headstock, you know, getting broken, but like,
But like also another huge factor, selling factor when I was selling those instruments, is that it's beat up, but like if you had a true vintage piece that was beat up that much, you run into some reliability issues. You know, you got pickups that are 40 years old and pots that are 30 years old. Like
the sweat,
you're still getting a new like that you can rely on that instrument to not break on you. You know,
I think there's also a misconception of the builders who are relicking their instruments. I think people might think that it's sort of a cheat or a cop out for them, like, oh, they're hiding something, they can't do a good finish, so they have to make like a relic instrument.
Man, that's environmentally sound to me.
It's completely
let's do the spin room.
It's the opposite, because it's actually an extra step in the process, and to do a good relic job is not easy. I've interviewed a couple. I'm writing an article every other month for No Treble, interviewing other builders.
What up, Kev?
Yeah. And I recently interviewed Chris Swope from Swope Guitars and Jason Abernethy of Abernethy Guitars, who both of them do have relic options for their instruments. And I kind of like picked their brain without getting like their cheat codes, but it's a really involved thing, and they've done their research. They've studied the vintage guitars. They have like entire other tool sets set aside in their workshops specifically for the relicing, you know, and it's all about like doing it in the right places and all that. So it's it's pretty cool.
A little bit about my history is I used to work for Chicago Music Exchange.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, Jody used to work for the world famous Bass Club Chicago.
Yes,
we both did a lot of videos and stuff. When working at CME, one of the first basses and companies I fell in love with was Sandberg Guitars. And one of the first things I noticed about them was their relicing and how realistic it was. And there's a guy, our guy Christian. I now work for Sandberg. Worked for CME for 8 years, and it was just an obvious transition because we just get along. And our guy Christian does that. He just that's all he does is just relicing, and he's got very interesting like methods of doing things. Like just he's got like a thing of keys that'll just like like things like that, like just but and then the end result is you look at it and it's just like, oh shit, like as someone who's been around a lot of vintage instruments, you see it and you're just like, man, that's the real deal. Like you hold it like I there was one of our TT4, which is like the J style bass that we have, and it was the masterpiece aging that Christian did. And I held it next to a 1961 jazz bass that we had laying, and like the wear was not, it wasn't obviously identical, but the type of wear and where it was, and like how the finish felt versus how the real deal felt, and like how like the pole pieces like looked like they were kind of worn away, and some of like the fucking the pickup covers were like worn off from people like putting their fingers there. Man, like. Just like seeing a vintage instrument that's been through the ringer like that, you look at it and you're like, that's a good instrument. That's gonna sound exactly, because somebody loved it, they cherished it. And so like when I see that level of relicing on anything, like whether it's new or not, I just think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna love that, because just because of that experience, not everybody has that. So I have a skewed perspective of that.
I have a Sandberg question for you. I remember reading something maybe on their website or seeing something a while ago. They have like a vibrating machine. What? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, man. That's. Are you interviewing me now?
Yeah.
You're part of the bass nerd.
I'm trying to get some intel here.
Well, we're very transparent about it. No. We did a study with the University of Dresden. I think that's what it's called, but the university in Dresden, I believe, was the physics department. And so basically, are you familiar with Ike amplification or tech amp?
Oh yeah.
So
for
sure.
And so they have the bass board.
The vibrating board.
So
essentially, we put it on one of those for 100 hours, and it basically, like, you see, you play they would do the study and they would play the bass and they would measure the frequencies that were being accentuated before the vibration treatment, and then they would put it under a solid 100 hours, and it's this pre-recorded looping bass playing, and it simulates that, and then like they did the same test after that, and you could see like the sustain has improved, it's like the wood is starting to respond,
everything just settles in
exactly to that frequency range. And like if you think about it, like you know this, like the way when a bass is strung to pitch, the wood is constantly moving, especially when it's being played, and so to like have that constantly worn in, it just feels like somebody had been playing it for 100 hours instead of just like, all right, it's done, I'm tuning it, I'm playing it, doing the spot check, okay, everything vibrates cool, package it up, send it off and stuff. And sometimes like sometimes a tree allows it to be an instrument, and it plays perfectly without anybody ever touching it. And sometimes, this, a tree just wants to be a tree. Exactly. I learned that from Micah Thomas from Alembic. That was her, and she probably got it from her mom, Susan. Wickersham. But like that's the whole thing. Like it just basically kind of helps guide it in that direction a bit more.
Makes perfect sense. And I'm sure that if doing a final setup after that too could probably really helps, because I know we'll send a bass out and then like maybe 6 months down the line sometimes I get an email like, oh, it's the truss rod needs adjusting, like is everything okay? I'm like, that's that's natural, the instrument's in a new climate, you've been playing it, it's settling, so you guys are kind of doing that process before it goes out. That's cool.
And that's time that you're paying for too.
Exactly.
You're literally paying for time, and like the maintenance of that.
I'm a little confused. I'm not sure. So what are you saying that like Sandberg takes the wood and vibrates it for an extended...
The finished instrument.
It's completely finished.
Assembled.
And then they strap it to a thing.
Yep.
And then for 100 hours or for
100 hours, yeah.
They just run like bass tones through it?
When the shop closes, it's still playing.
But it's not actually like picking the strings, right?
No. It's vibrating underneath in that board.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is completely news to me.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I when I first heard about it, I was just like, yeah, this is bullshit. There's no way.
Sounds a little voodoo.
Yeah, and then being playing side by side, oh, this could be this could be legit, and then actually seeing the science behind it and have that explained to me, and looking at the charts and everything, it's just like, oh shit, this is legit. They did their homework on this one. I know a lot of violin makers and orchestral instruments, they kind of, some of them will follow that same principle. Just probably with speakers. I'm not sure exactly how they do it.
I'm gonna buy one of those paint mixing machines
No,
that they
just-
have at Home Depot.
Just go to Lion's Den and get a bunch of vibrators, bunch of dildos.
bunch of dildos.
Set them on top.
I'll put them in the sauna with a bunch of dildos. 69 hours.
Yes, dude. Oh my god, that'd be great. What are you gonna call that?
The
It'll come to me.
different size dildo.
Yeah,
Have a different effect.
yeah. We'll call it the Mandingo treatment.
Oh jeez.
The Peter North.
Going off the rails here. We don't. That's a road we don't need to go down.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I learned something today. I'd like the Mandingo treatment. I'm like, Sandberg, please.
It just comes with just a big dildo.
Yeah, there's like
You
a
open it,
special
it's still
place.
vibrating.
In the case, there's a special spot.
Yeah.
Each bass comes with its own dildo that was used. to
Yeah.
vibrate.
So when you're not playing it, you can turn it on. I think Backbeat should make it. Yurko.
Oh,
Dude,
man.
have you guys played the fucking Backbeat?
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's
No,
definitely.
I'm not familiar.
We had. I actually
man.
my first NAMM, first summer NAMM. Yurko was next to me, so I got to experience it there. And then he still, I think, had one of the earlier prototypes, but it was already pretty awesome. And then last year at Winter NAMM, he had one at the booth with Trickfish and my stuff. And yeah,
So-
it's so cool.
Yeah, for those who don't know, including
Don't
Jody,
know.
it's essentially. At first, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, that's like a Nintendo 64 Rumble Pack.
Yeah.
But it's not. It what it does, you strap it to your strap,
Yeah.
and it sits on your back. And there's two knobs. There's one for volume, and that's because there's a headphone out, so you can use it as a practice tool.
Oh, okay.
And there's also the vibration level. And what it does is it simulates as if you're that sweet feeling when you're sitting in front of a big 810 fridge and it's pumping that bass through there. I think there's a speaker inside the Backbeat that resonates at those frequencies. So it feels like you're actually standing in front of that. And when I did the test, I was at Summer NAMM 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing the crowdsourcing and stuff, and I'm like, I gotta know what this is like. And they put the headphones on me. And he's like, I'm going to start it without any vibration. And then he just kind of slowly dialed it in. I was just like, oh, what? Whoa. And your playing just changes.
Yeah.
It just totally fucking, you just feel more natural. You're not digging in to fight the excess noise that's going on around you.
Yeah.
And then you turn it off. And I actually felt this anger.
Emptiness.
This caveman reaction. Why did you fucking turn that off, man? Turn that shit back on.
Yeah.
So then, of course, I got one, and I put it to the test. I played a show at the Empty Bottle, and the headliner, it was packed house, and the headliner had asked if they could leave their stuff set up on stage, leave their backline going, including the drum set. And we're like, yeah, of course, and so we set up, but our drummer had to kind of set up off to the side of the backline drum kit, and it was right in front of the bass rig that I was using. He's like, dude, I'm so sorry you're not gonna be able to hear or feel it. I'm like, it's all good, dude. I got my Backbeat. It was my first show with it. Let's see what happens. And so I just basically
Nerd.
I had well, you know what? I had the wedge in front of me and I had it on there, and it felt like I was standing right in front of that cab. And you you just get into it. We've all done those shows
Right.
where you're you can't hear yourself, you can't feel it, and you're just kind of finding the right spot, or you have the fridge, but as soon as you walk away from it, you lose that feeling.
I just had a really good idea. Let me know if you guys want to go in on this with me.
Yes.
We'll make vibrators that are triggered like the backbeat by your bass guitar.
Oh, yeah, dude.
So when you're on vacation or something, you know, your girl's sitting alone at
I'm gonna
home.
practice some
Pretty
bass.
sure there's like
Babe,
Bluetooth vibrators, right? That's
Yeah.
gotta be a thing.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
But syncing like
you know, like what's your girlfand's favorite bass line?
So we need. Oh, dude, we just play some Barry White tunes, man. Yeah.
Do you think it is it more aggressive if you're slapping versus playing?
Well, you got to start slow, man. Like you can't just go right into
no,
it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. 5 to 7 minutes is plenty of time, right? Like, you don't
Well, just depends on who you ask. Who's into it, you know?
Well, listen, I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's
Cool. All right. Serek Basses is going to make a pivot now where I'm done with bass guitars.
Hey, man, sex sells. We all know this.
It definitely does. I know you're like a lot of your basses. Seems like you're a pretty big passive electronic.
Unless
guy.
otherwise requested, everything is passive. I think I've maybe used a preamp like 2 times in the last 3 years.
And why?
I personally don't care for them. I like to use pedals and effects, and I just never really got comfortable with how active electronics drive effects.
Yeah.
Maybe I just never had like the right preamps or, dialed it in right. But there's just something I like about being able to dig into a passive bass a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I like to compensate, by driving the amp and the effects and all that.
Yeah.
There's some simplicity there too. I think active electronics can get a little bit noisy sometimes. Not that,
Sure.
A single coil pickup is noisy too, but there's just extra stuff kind of getting in the way of your signal chain. So I'm a little bit of a purist, but there's some preamps out there that I really enjoy. I just think for our instruments in particular, it's, I don't know, just apples and oranges, I think. So, yeah.
Cool.
What about you, Jody? What's your flavor preference?
I mean, I guess it depends on the situation. I've been in a lot of most of the bands I've been in are very kind of modern sounding and electronic-y, a lot of synth elements and stuff like that. So I've always liked having the active preamp for a couple reasons. One, being on stage and being able to dial things in a little bit more. You're during a sound check, you get a rough idea, but once you everybody's playing and then drummers hitting harder and the synth player's turned up his stuff or whatever. So I like being able to go I need a little bit more low end or whatever, and being able to control it a little bit at my fingertips. But I mean, there's something to be said for the straight up passive, vintage P, vintage J tone that's been used on every record for the last 50 years. Something about that to be said for that too. And I think I've been I kind of was when I got in serious about bass, I kind of went I had a Ken Smith active instrument, and I was like, this is it. If you're passive, you're a loser kind of thing. And I've definitely a lot of bass players I look up to and friends have gone more towards the passive route. And so I've been oh, maybe I'm the idiot here. Let me play with this a little bit more. So I've been experimenting more and more with just playing passive.
I don't know if there's science behind this, but I also feel active instruments tend to be more on the compressed side and thus a little bit less responsive to your touch.
Sure.
So I'm all about where, how hard I'm playing, where I'm plucking, using a pick, all that kind of stuff. And I just feel passive instruments respond a little bit more. There's a little bit more headroom there, so to speak.
Sure.
I think there's no room for error on a lot of active electronics.
That too.
Sure.
It's just when the joke of it's just it's got all these fancy bells and whistles and shit is not going to make you a better player. I'm well, maybe it will, because it doesn't really hide anything.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of clarity, a lot of definition.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably less dynamics. When you have a passive instrument, you can really dig in. You start digging in on an active instrument, you might start clipping stuff, and causing problems.
It's just different tools, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Different tools for different projects.
Yep. Right.
I love both. I mean, the majority of the time I use my Sandberg, the 48, that Thunderbird looking one, and the majority of the time I play it in passive mode because I use a lot of pedals, and like you said, it's just the pedals respond differently.
Yeah.
But then if I'm using that with no pedals, I'll use the preamp and just kind of you could get that driving woofy sort of mudbucker sort of sound out of it by cranking the bass and cutting the treble, on that. that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get out of just playing in passive mode without like changing up the effects.
Right.
You know,
I think it's also interesting that like I don't know about you guys, but I originally started on a 6-string guitar and then went to
get
bass.
the fuck out of here. We're canceling this.
I've certainly played a handful of active guitar, like 6-string guitars, active EMGs or something like that, but like I have zero desire to have an active 6-string guitar. You know, I wouldn't ever imagine like really wanting that. But when it came to bass, it was like, oh, this seemed to make more sense to me. With that said, like, you know, I think every main bass that I've had for the last, you know, decade have all had active electronics in them. Besides, like, here and there, I had a couple vintage pieces or whatever that I've traded off or sold. But yeah, I think it's different strokes for different folks, and like I said, for different, you know, depending on what it needs. I do like the idea of just simple tone, volume, go. You know, and then like you said, having like a nice preamp pedal might be the way to go. I think like you know, I've always been a fan of like dark glass stuff. Makes a killer preamp pedal. Even like you get the really affordable like Aguilar tone hammer preamp pedals are really like a couple $100, $300.
Help me out here on this. This isn't a slam on preamp pedals, but if you have an amp that's got a preamp in it, why do you need another preamp in front of your preamp?
It depends on the preamp that you're playing into.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you're using an Ampeg SVT. Right. Not everybody wants the Ampeg SVT sort of sound.
Get
so
another
you can
amp then.
Well, it's not always that simple though. Like
no,
let's say
true.
like
I get it.
Yeah, like I mean SVTs are expensive,
right.
You know, and you want a more modern or dialed in sound, and you want the amp to just act as a power amp, as a vessel to voice that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It just adds a different level of color and control. Sometimes you have like, you know, those Gallien-Kruger 800 RBs, or you're doing like you're kind of like beholden to whatever the backline company is giving you.
Absolutely.
You know, you can get the sound you're looking for 10 times out of 10.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen some people use them like if you have different basses, you know, or if you've got like a fretless and a fretted instrument, like you want to change your tone up a bit.
Right.
You know, if you've got a certain song that's got needs a different color instrument, you know, bass sound, you use that preamp. I also sold a ton of preamp pedals to people who would buy electric upright basses, the EUBs. Like I think those were like huge, like a major.
That makes a lot
almost
of sense.
turned that into a different instrument completely.
Yeah.
So I would sell a lot of those to those guys. I don't know that I don't think I have any bass preamp pedals personally, but I really like the dark glass stuff because it had those overdrive circuits in them.
Oh yeah,
that sounded really.
The
great.
Alpha Omega Ultra.
Yeah, killer stuff. Did you see they have a new preamp pedal they just released?
Yeah.
The
Hyperluminal. No, that's the compressor.
The harmonic booster.
That was an older design that they retweaked.
They brought back. I saw they just released that, so that's pretty interesting.
Nice. I haven't tried one yet.
I have not either.
I haven't even tried one of the originals.
Wink.
Yeah. Wink,
Let
wink.
us play it.
We're winking right now for.
We will give it back to you when we're done.
By the way, this podcast is sponsored by Dark Glass Electronics and Town Branch Bourbon.
Where's that made at?
It's Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey
I think I know
in
somebody
Lexington,
from
Kentucky, where the horses are and the men are men and sheep are nervous.
Weird, odd question.
I love it.
I don't know. Well, this might not pertain to you too much since you do everything in house, but have the Trump tariffs affected your cost or building or importing anything?
You know, I can't say for sure, but I feel like certain things have been harder to get.
Yeah.
Like for example, I get a lot of stuff from All Parts, like some of the smaller things. It's just an easy source, and they seem to be out of stock of a lot more stuff these days. And I don't know if that's part of it, because I imagine a lot of that stuff's coming from overseas.
Right.
And they have a warehouse, and and getting it into the warehouse.
Right. So maybe there's something there. Otherwise, most of the stuff that I get is more or less within the United States. A lot of the pickups, like we get pickups from Curtis Novak. All of our hardware is Hipshot USA made stuff. I buy all our lumber local at Owl in Des Plaines. Yeah. Those guys have been so good to me, and it's actually really nice to actually just sit in front of the actual piece that you're going to buy and pick it up and look at it.
Side note, is there any issue with like drying out wood? Like,
it's definitely something to take into consideration. It's Owl does a really good job. Their stuff, it's not necessarily kiln drying, but before it hits their sales floor, it's been warehoused for a long time. So it's already pretty stable. But then what we do is we bring the raw stock into our shop, and I usually don't touch it for at least a couple of months.
Yeah.
And then I start cutting it down in dimension, and then I'll let it sit again. Then we'll glue the blanks up. Then we'll let them sit again. So by the time we actually use a piece, I probably bought it at least 6 months prior, and it's acclimated to our shop. The old shop we had almost no climate control, and it was kind of a nightmare. This new one is really great. Like the temperature and humidity stays pretty stable all year round. It still gets a little dry in the winter here because Chicago winters are so brutal. So we just have to kind of make some adjustments to our production methods around that time, especially with the finish work. But it's kind of nice actually building in the winter in the drier climate because the wood shrinks, and so then you can you're gonna have already gotten rid of the fret sprout and all that kind of stuff, and the wood is gonna kind of have already done most of its shifting. So
yeah, and you had made a comment earlier about people like maybe having some setup issues every 6 months or something like that. But I like that. I would get those calls all the time in the music shop after I sold, like, oh, my bass is buzzing. Well, or they might have that problem the moment they got it. Well, it's 30 degrees here in Chicago, and it just went halfway across the country.
Exactly.
And now it's in California, and the humidity's a lot different. Like, you have to set up your instruments here in Chicago at least twice a year.
Yeah.
When it gets cold and when it gets hot. And sometimes that's in the same week.
Right.
Yeah. It would get to a point where I would if I'm on the phone, if I was on the phone with someone, I would just tell them straight up, like, hey, it's just keep in mind, we're also detuning the strings. That's another thing. Before shipping, just to take the tension away.
Right.
You're going to string it up to pitch. It's going to be buzzy because it has had no tension for like 5 days while it's been in transit, and the neck's gone to a backbone. And like if you didn't take that step, that phone call was a very upsetting.
I just spent $4,000 on this bass,
and it's like you can't explain to them, no, just string it up to pitch, let it sit for like a couple hours and set. Like, no, like it should be a piece of hardwood that doesn't ever move ever.
And especially it's a 6-string bass, like
exactly. So
we would get a lot of that.
Back to the tariffs and wood and stuff. For those who might not know, everyone here, I'm assuming, is familiar with CITES and the regulations on rosewood and dangerous
Rosewood's
stuff.
back.
Yes, exactly. As of November 26th.
Yes.
That's the official date. I just looked it up on their website. But yes, so CITES is the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. So they didn't want to put it wouldn't be CITES but so CITES. That basically for a while restricted, and it still does, certain species of wood. And there was some controversy in 2017 when rosewood, basically there were restrictions on that to prove the chain of custody, when it was milled, where it was milled, and all of that stuff. It made it much more difficult to ship things internationally, just to export and import without documentation. So now so because of that, a lot of builders moved to alternative woods that were similar to rosewood, but a lot easier to get into the country, like Palfaro, for instance. But now, as of November 26th, you can just kind of ship things freely. You'll still have to pay import taxes based on where you are and everything, but it'll be a lot easier to move that around. So I'm sure retailers are super excited, and I know we're Sandberg's excited. I'm sure you're excited too to be able to do that.
I think they got a lot of complaints from instrument builders. We're like, we're not really that big a slice of rosewood.
We're making 1% of the whole industry, maybe.
Honestly, it's been sort of a blessing in disguise. We only used Indian rosewood on fingerboards, so that was the only thing that was really affected. And actually, Bubinga, which we use as a fingerboard a lot, which I think is still going to be on the list. So that one we still can't ship internationally, but it was kind of nice to be forced into some alternatives because I discovered some species that I hadn't used before.
I mean, you're using the Wenge.
Wenge is a huge one.
Awesome.
And that one is such eye candy for people. They're always what is that? I use a lot of Jatoba these days, and my favorite it's called Monterrey rosewood. It's not a true rosewood, but I think it's a South American species, really similar to Palfaro.
Yeah,
and
bloodwood.
Yeah, and I'm able to find it locally, and it's it looks really good, and it's every bit as good as the rosewoods are. So it's kind of nice actually to stay away from that and find some other more renewable sources.
You got to adapt, man.
Yeah.
You got to be able to adapt.
Yep.
Yeah. when somebody wants to get a Serek bass and they call you and they go, I want this bass. Here are some of the options I want.
Yeah, I don't give my phone number out anymore. Big mistake.
Yeah.
Getting text and can you do this? And I mean, listen, I love Federa basses, but some of their customers are the worst. Okay, I had some people just they would call me to spec out a Federa, then they'd call Federa and go like, so what's like the best top you got in right now ready to make a bass? And they're like, we're Federa. Everything we make is a 10, you know?
Yeah.
And they would just change orders and just like, sometimes I spend 3 or 4 hours a day on one customer just like doing a thing and like really hammering out, which is fine. Like that's my job. But then like 2 days later they go, all right, let's change all this stuff. And then they spent back on the computer and read some talk based thing that was told them that they shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And
gotta be careful with that.
Oh, that was a nightmare. But anyway, getting back to, so somebody calls you, they go, I want this bass, da-da-da.
Yeah.
What's the average build time?
Average build time right now is about 6 months. So
That's good.
I just finished filling up our slots for April. So if you were to order a bass today, you would get it sometime in next May.
That's good. That's a
too
really
bad,
a
right?
healthy lead time.
Yeah. I like it there. It's like any more than that, I start to get a little stressed out, and I don't want to sort of scare people away because they don't want to wait that long. But
not just that, you don't want to rush.
Well, that too.
You can't rush
for sure.
greatness, dude.
No.
Yeah, no, so I think 6 months for a U.S. handmade thing like seems 100%.
Yeah, and most people are
reasonable,
A-okay with that. There's a few there are some cases where someone's like, well, that's fine, but I'm going on tour in March. Do you think there's something can you help us out? And I can usually shift the schedule around a little bit to try and accommodate
more money.
Those people.
We have what we call a rush fee, and that is $600. Nice. And then like I know you're like not doing a whole lot of like fancy exotic wood tops and stuff like that. So like, is there a large selection of colors to choose from? Or?
Yeah, we have a standard color chart that's probably about a dozen colors, and then from there I'll do any custom color pretty much.
You do sparkle?
I've been getting asked to do sparkle lately. I might have to because I've been getting more and more requests for it. Right now I'm not set up for it.
Yeah.
We do some metallic.
That said doo-doo.
Doo-doo metallics.
That Galaxy sparkle you did for this.
So that was acrylic, which that was a really we put it in an 1/8 inch acrylic top that it was black with like a sort of iridescent silver confetti in it. That was a lot of
wicked.
fun. And a lot of people do think that's a sparkle finish, and so I've been getting more requests for that. So I might have to figure that out soon. I don't know how that would work as well with a satin finish though, because we're strictly satin finish these days. We don't do any gloss.
So doing a sparkle finish with that,
I don't know if that would like hurt, the shininess of it. If it might not be as
it's time to
brilliant,
experiment, dude.
Yeah, here we go. We'll try it out.
One thing I totally dig about your basses is that you're definitely. I mean, it's not like another P bass, another J bass. Yeah. Like, is there any desire to do any of that?
No, it was a conscious decision. I think. Probably because of working at Lakland, I'm like Lakland makes a great bass. Sadowski makes a great. Like, there's plenty of companies already doing that. They've got that ground covered, and I don't have anything against making basses like that. I didn't want to compete with it.
Right.
And I do like some quirkier, older vintage basses. I've always liked the cheap $300 like Craigslist or eBay find.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I'm like, maybe I can combine some of those influences, Rickenbackers, Gibsons, all that. Maybe I can kind of like fuse the two a little bit, and that's where. And then the short scale thing, I didn't set out to make short scale, like kind of brand ourselves as like a short scale based company. It just kind of happened that way. I built the first bass I built for Serek Basses was short scale Sacramento, and then the Midwestern, and so we kind of like led with that, but it wasn't a conscious decision, and I think people just kind of took to it. So yeah.
Nice. And then when we were demoing those other basses, you were saying, did you send a bass to Incubus, or are you still working on that?
No, we built a bass for Ben Kenny. He came through maybe 3 or 4 months ago and actually picked it up from our shop in person.
I'm a huge Incubus fan.
Me too. It was really cool. I had to like definitely take a few deep breaths before he came in and just played it cool.
Right.
Nice. No, he's a really nice guy. I can't remember. I think he actually reached out to us via Instagram, And
you seem to be getting a lot of Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Instagram is great.
It's fun.
Like I haven't spent a dime on marketing besides going to like NAMM shows and stuff. You know, it's a cool world that we live in.
Oh yeah,
with that
and
stuff.
it's so easy to like communicate with people and like the public forum and just give them eye candy and stuff and exchange ideas, etc.
It's really cool then when you actually go to like one of the trade shows and meet some of these people that you've been conversing with in internet land, and everyone's just really cool. We're really lucky to have that going for sure.
How crazy does your fan base and following get? Like in the comments specifically,
you know,
it can get kind of ugly in there.
You know, I have to give a lot of credit to our fan base and customers. Like everyone's actually pretty chill. I don't get a lot of like controversy or debates.
That's good.
Online, and I try not to like stoke it. Like I know if anyone, like some people like to get into like the talk-based forums, and if like a builder, if someone makes a bad comment, like the builder will get involved or something. I try and stay away from all that stuff too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you know, nowadays people, if they're like the real fans, like and just smart people in general, they'll mitigate it themselves.
Right.
Yeah. You know, like you found that for sure.
Yeah, I had mentioned that to Mark not long ago that like when I first started, I was working for Bass Club, and there was a camera there and there was a showroom full of instruments, and I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to start shooting videos. And I just did it on my own. Mark, the owner at Bass Club, never even said anything. I was like, well, I'm just going to do this. I got some downtime. And, it was we're going to figure it out as we go. First videos were done on iMovie and, gritty and lit poorly and framed terribly. And in the beginning, I'd get some haters, or like, why'd you do this way, and blah blah blah, and
make your own fucking video, dude.
Well, that's kind of
just
what it
shut
was.
up.
So what I did early on is, frankly, I would just delete those comments. I wouldn't engage.
Yeah.
And then it got to a certain point where I had enough. I'd put up a video and it'd get thousands of views within the first 24 hours, and then I'd get a hater or two coming on there and going like, "Oh, you suck" or whatever. I didn't have to mitigate that. People who enjoyed the videos would fight on my behalf and just be like, well, where the fuck is your video?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're probably some fat ass sitting behind your computer.
I was that guy on your
you were
behalf.
The one talking shit?
No. I was the guy coming a few times. Like somebody would say something just stupid about a technical thing, and I would just kind of like slip in and just be like, make your own video, etc. Like just whatever was because like like I get it, you get it. Like most people understand. Like this takes it takes time and skill.
Right.
No one's perfect, and it takes a bit of courage to put yourself out there, knowing that the internet can be a very terrible place.
I feel like I don't let that stuff bother me. I was never really concerned about like people hating or whatever, and and honestly, some of that feedback was honestly good because some of it was. I mean, I much prefer someone going like, "Hey, I like what you're doing, but maybe do it this way next time," or would you do? That's the better thing than going like, "Oh, what? It's so buzzy," or whatever.
The compliment sandwich. You start with something positive, and you deliver the bad news, and then but good job. Nice try.
Through some of that hate, I would change things. They were like, "Well, you're right. This should be done this way," and I would change things, and if that's how the thing got better. But I mean, there's a difference between trolling and being constructive. And at the end of the day, I don't. At this point, like. I mean, I've done some, you're a guy who likes pick players. I'm sure you're familiar with like Cody Wright.
Yeah, for sure.
Bobby Vega.
Bobby,
let's
Bobby Vega.
The man right there.
Oh, Bobby.
So I shot some videos with Cody that went mad viral on Facebook. Like all of a sudden, Leland Sklar is like commenting on these videos and shit. I'm like,
yes,
shit, And then of course there's like, you play with pick, you loser. I'm like, this is one of the baddest dudes on the planet right now, just ripping shit in your face. What can you do? You suck. You suck. You need to go.
Oh, you suck. Yeah.
But, you could have 1,000 love comments, and the one that's going to get the attention is the one that says you suck. It's a hate comment, stuff like that. So
that usually
stop
comes
the
from
hate, people. Stop.
It's exactly. It just comes from you have to get into the psyche of that person. Like, what are they doing? And like, you start to develop a bit of compassion even for the haters over time. Right. That like the headspace, like why are they such a curmudgeon? What happened in their life to make them so shitty?
Right.
Like, and have to like not be able to keep that shitty thought to themselves, like have to express it on a public way. And like like not to get too sidetracked, but there was like someone recently who posted something that was a bit controversial with regard to a Santa Claus, and like they got eviscerated, and understandably so. Right. But then there was another post that same person did earlier that was talking about like going to the Grand Canyon and like jokingly said like, I'm not going to jump, haha. And then to see the people who were like so vicious to say like you should jump, and it's just like. What is the matter with you? Like, why are you going there? Right. Like, sure, this person said something shitty. Yeah. But move on with your life, dude. Like, why do you have to be that?
No. I definitely still see. There's like whenever I get that urge to like, there's a well-known bass player that rhymes with Schmefferlin, who it gets a lot of hate on the internet, and sometimes I read his posts and I'm like. I just want to go off, but I never, ever do.
Don't take the bait.
Not to get spiritual, but you manifest your reality. So if you want to go in a negative direction, your reality is going to suck.
Dude, go spiritual. This is the perfect place for that.
I used to have this conversation with my band buddies because we would sit around and just talk about all the bands that we hated. We'd be like, oh, that band sucks. That band that we just played with, what a bunch of idiots, And then we just started becoming negative, curmudgeon-y people. Yeah. And so we're like, why don't we just try talking about what we do like? Right. Well, and then the sunshine came out. And we're like, oh, the world is a better place.
That fits in perfectly with like one of the things that Jody like told me when we were talking about this whole thing. So it's so good that you're bringing that up. Yeah. Is that you're never gonna like on this podcast, you're never gonna hear us bad mouthing people. Right. You're never gonna hear us like trash talking anything like that. We want to keep it.
If we do, it'll be edited out. So,
no, like no one specific. Like it's exactly as you said. Like there's enough negativity out there in the world. Right. There's no point in putting more of that out there. Right. And just like let's talk about the things that are good, and we have enough information at our fingertips that we can make our own informed decisions. Yeah. It's just like not everybody has had the luxury or the the time put in and experience that the three of us do. Right. And so like I guess we have a responsibility to like kind of convey something in whatever entertaining way, but also like let them make their own decisions as much as they can. And like we've got a comment section. Like but people will duke it out there. I'm sure we'll get emails and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like there's just no point. Like there's so much more to life than just like engaging in the comments.
I think the whiskey's taking effect. We're getting into like I love you, man. I love you guys.
Dude. Weed.
it's the weed, baby. I think it was Michael Che recently. Somebody asked him like, so what do you think of the new Kanye gospel record? And he goes like, you know what? It's breaking all these gospel chart records, whatever. I realize like instead of hating on it, like I just realized that album isn't for me.
That too.
Yeah, there's a million people out there who love that record. Yeah. It's just not.
Just
for
don't
me.
go there then. Yeah.
And I feel that way about a lot of musical gear. Like just isn't my kind of thing. Right? Yeah. Are you familiar with the bass player Hadrian Farode?
Yeah.
So he was on the cover of Bass Player or something like that. And this woman makes a YouTube video just hating on him. Like, I got the new Bass Player magazine. I see this guy, and I turn on his music, and it's just this rambling, like, because he's like this virtuoso player that, like, can play things that most people can't cleanly, fast, whatever. Fast, yeah. So she puts out this YouTube thing with it's just her sitting in front of a camera just hating on him hard. So everybody goes in on her like, who are you? She's like looks kind of like a female Bret Michaels. She got a big bandana on her head and she's just hating hard, and all these people are like, who the fuck are you? Play a bass, let's see. So as I'm seeing this all unfold, I go, I bet it's 24 hours before she takes this video down. So what am I going to do? I'm going to rip this video off of YouTube because I know she's going to take it down. Oh, yeah. So I did. Sure enough, the next day it's taken down and everybody's in an uproar. And I ended up reposting it which I probably shouldn't have done.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
And then people were like, I think actually even Jocko made a comment like, dude, that's funny. I can't believe you shared that. You kept it. We're wise enough to see that this was going to blow up in her face. So then like I repost it, and then Hadri reaches out to me about a day later like, hey man, I appreciate what you're doing. I think she's had enough. Like, let's take it down.
That is a classy fucking move, man.
Right, yeah. He's like, I get it. Right. It's fun. We've all made fun of her. We can move on now. And she had like, I think she worked at a music store too and was getting a lot of hate and whatever. But yeah, I probably shouldn't have reposted her stuff. But I knew
at the end of the day, like she took it. She has the responsibility there,
right?
And it seemed like that she did something that was irresponsible, and she very obviously learned from it. Because have you heard a peep from her since?
Nope, she was gone. I still have the video, by the way, on my YouTube channel, private. But after because I kind of felt like, hey, she deserved to get a little hate because she was just like, I played his music and then I skipped ahead 9 minutes and it still sounded like the same thing. And who is this? It was terrible. I can't believe they put him on cover of Bass Player magazine or whatever it was. And then when I reposted it, and because everybody was, I don't think it was talk based, but maybe it was Facebook or something where people were like, it turned into this thing. And then when I in the comments was like, oh, by the way, now that it's gone, I have it.
Yeah,
here it is. Okay, because people were like, what is everybody talking about? Where's the video? It had been taken down at that point. I was like, oh, it's right here.
It's that negativity though. It sells. Right. It's like a drug, man.
Yeah, it does. It
does. Like Gibson. When they did that video,
the memes that came out after that.
But what was awesome about that is that I met Mark before. Yeah. Like he had come to the store a few times. I'd been to the shop when he was working at Norm's, and he's a doof. He's a great guy. Like he's just like
Seems like he handled it.
He's pretty
well.
straight. He did. Yeah. And I loved that he took the time to take the memes that were out there. Yeah. He goes and he just posted like, these are my favorite ones so far. And it's great because he's not taking himself that seriously.
That's
key. Like it may not have been the best move on their behalf, but like at the end of the day, it got people talking. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's the people are talking about Gibsons.
Right.
Speaking of spreading love, I think a fan of yours is Tim
LaFave.
Is that how you say it?
LaFave.
Well, that brings me into another news in the last couple weeks. Fucking Black Crowes are back touring.
Yeah.
I am a huge Black Crowes fan.
Nice.
I've seen them so many times. When they were on tour with Jimmy Page, I saw that tour. And he's now playing with them.
Wait, he is?
He's toured.
I missed that.
Oh.
Damn, dog. When did that get announced?
He just played
about 2 months ago, maybe?
Oh,
about a month ago?
I'm out of touch.
Yeah,
You've been in Japan.
I have been in Japan.
Black Crowes just did Howard Stern. He was playing. They did a couple songs on Howard Stern with him, and he was playing with them. And then the Whiskey Go-Go or something they were playing too. There's a lot of YouTube videos, cell phone videos out there. So I'm just really happy that Black Crowes are playing. Unfortunately, they're playing the World Music Theater or whatever it's called. I'm not a big fan of that. Out in Tinley Park.
Oh yeah, whatever they call that now.
Yeah, the First Bank Amphitheater.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually saw Black Crowes with Jimmy Page there, but that's not the type of setting I want to see them in anymore. Right. I want that little smaller, more intimate thing. And
I mean, yeah, it'd be awesome to see him like at a venue like Empty Bottle. But...
Right. Well, I mean, if they play, I would love to see him at like the Park West or something. But that still only holds a few thousand people. Which
here's the thing, though. Like they're the kind of band I would think that would probably do those sort of like jam bus scenarios. So now that we've got Jake here, who is a direct line to the bassist. You've got to let us know.
Let's put Tim on the spot. Let's call him right now.
Yeah. Timothy. It's Jacob.
Let me just wax about Tim real quick, because that dude, he's one of the coolest people in the whole industry, and I don't know how he's arranged himself this way, but he's like Kevin.
Fucking plays with everybody.
He's like Kevin Bacon. Like everyone is 1 degree away from Tim LaFave. Yeah. Everyone knows him. I get more people coming my way than anything. Like I have a little questionnaire on my quote form, like, how did you hear about Serek Basses?
Yeah,
probably like 60% of people write his name in there.
Yeah,
and it's crazy.
He's playing with Derek fucking Trucks.
Yeah,
dude.
he's the bass player's bass
Maybe
player.
the greatest guitar player living right now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
in that argument, he's one of those dudes that might be like your Lemmy moment, where if I like Derek Trucks was next to me, I don't think I could talk. I would just.
He's very very friendly though. Like he's so he has a really really early Midwestern that actually has the old symmetrical headstock. I think maybe only a few of them out there at all. And I delivered his first bass to him at an IHOP in like Joliet. He was playing. He was on tour with
You want an appetizer sampler platter? Come on, man.
What is it? The
no,
Grand
actually,
Slam or?
not too far off. So he was on tour. There was like some outdoor amphitheater over there that he was playing with Derek and Susan. And he's like, I'm getting breakfast at the IHOP. Like, can you meet me there? Bring the bass there. And I walked in with my girlfriend at the time, and like we sat down at the booth with him. And he didn't even like take the bass out right away. He's like, "Oh, I got some extra pancakes. Like, if you guys want it." I'm just like,
that's
dude.
what's up. That is why he gets the gig.
Exactly, that is what's up.
That's
the
why
nicest guy.
That's why he gets the gig.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, cool dude. You could just tell.
Super cool dude. Yeah, very genuine and follows the positivity philosophy like no other. Like everything's just good. In his life.
I got super excited about that Black Crowes reunion. I think like Chris Robinson might be one of the greatest vocalists to ever do it, man.
Ooh.
That dude is just
hot take.
Just, I mean, he's like, I just feel like when I watch him sing, he just is in it. It's genuine. He's loving it. I mean,
he's singing
like,
just to you.
Yeah, a little bit. Enough that like fucking Jimmy Page wanted to tour with them. And,
that's a big deal.
I mean, he's got definitely sounds a lot like Led Zeppelin or like even like a Jeff Buckley or something like that. But yeah, I mean, for a dude like he plays with the two of my most favorite bands in the world. There's something to be said for that, you know. So yeah, shout out to him and doing big stuff right now, and so that's very cool. Well, I don't know. Are we wrapping up here?
I think we are, man. I think we hit it all the stuff I wanted to talk about. You can see that we could hit a lot of the stuff you wanted to talk about. We pimped out the kick-ass basses that Jake's doing.
Do we have enough scandal in there? Enough controversy?
Enough controversy.
Yeah.
Well, so
I said fuck enough.
I like to do like a couple rapid fire questions at
I
the
love
end.
It.
Ooh.
So some of these I feel like we might already got to or we know, but like you can just say your answer, or you can say you can decline.
Yeah, I can pass.
You can pass, or you can also say your answer and why you believe it that way. So, first question: active or passive?
Passive.
We know you're
Enough
passive,
said.
right? Maple or rosewood?
Rosewood.
All right.
I like it dark.
That's what she said.
That's what he said.
That's what we said.
That's what they said.
That's what I said.
Do you have a favorite speaker size or like speaker combo setup?
I used to really like 15s, and then I discovered 12s.
That's what I love. I love them 12s. I got that
12s.
CN 112 over there, Bergantino. I love it.
I only play with 12s too.
I think
Turn
it's
the
like
tweeter off and just give me a 12.
You just get like, and that's the thing. I guess we have a responsibility to tell people why we like 12s. It's because I found that you get the punch and clarity of a 10, and you get the air movement of a 15 with the right 12.
Yep.
Right. That's 100% what I would have said. Do you have a favorite bass player?
So Chris Squire, of old. As a human being, Tim LaFave, and what he does, he's like such a versatile guy. I love what he does with effects. He's got his foot in like the avant jazz world, in the rock world. He does it all. So you gotta give him a shout for the current favorite, the favorite.
But I need like a little like.
Yeah, you guys need like fart buttons and like stuff.
We can just edit those in.
Yeah.
I'll put those in.
And fart.
Do you? What was your first like stringed instrument, bass or guitar or whatever?
I actually started on trumpet.
Noise.
Trumpet, tuba.
Dude, exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
tuba,
good.
That's right.
Flea, John Entwistle, John McVie, all started on trumpet.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
Yeah.
But I discovered with my buddy a Wurlitzer 6-string guitar in his dad's basement. So that was like my first like, whoa, what is this thing? You know, like open up, the case is kind of glowing. So I did take guitar lessons for a very short time, and just you know, I wasn't very good at it. It wasn't like I wasn't good enough at guitar, so I had to play bass, but I just realized bass spoke to me more. So
nice. Do you have a piece of gear that you regret getting rid of?
Many. One that comes to mind right away, I had a Guild B301 bass.
Okay. I don't know what that is off the top of my
Look
head,
it up.
but
It's got a crazy wacky pick guard. It kind of looks like a pendulum on the lower bow.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Long scale. It wasn't very well balanced, but it had this single coil pickup that was like a soap bar style, but with exposed pulled pieces, kind of like a jazz pickup. But it sounded more like a bisonic. It just like, it was super aggressive. It sounded really, really good. It looked really cool. I had a white one that had been owned by a smoker, so it was just yellow.
Yeah, dude.
You know, it was great.
Yeah,
I've got
a grabber, 76 grabber that was refinished white, and I always wanted a white one, but I never thought they existed, and I saw this old refinned one. It came in, and I guess somebody may have roasted the neck too. Oh. But it had that same sort of effect where it was like definitely a smoker owned that thing. Yeah.
That's the look right there.
I might know the answer to this one. Hard case or gig bag?
There's some really good gig bags out there these days.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And I like to I'm on the go. I like to travel light. I like to walk around. Cases are great for if you're touring and you need to throw it in a trailer and it's going to get smashed by a bunch of other shit, but
you know, I actually use for the 48 that I have, the Sandberg.
Yeah.
I use a mono bass sleeve just because it fits that.
It's a long
and I've
bag,
taken that on the road, man. Yeah. It's totally fine.
Exactly. Yeah. If the bass is well built, you shouldn't have to worry too much. So.
Yeah, I've been using an in-case gig bag for a decade, and it's still like brand new. Like I see some of them get torn up, and it's like a beast.
We're getting some new custom-made gig bags. I've got one over there in the corner that are real nice. I'm excited about those.
Choice.
Yeah.
Tube or solid state?
You know, I like solid state with the tube preamp.
Don't we all?
Mm-hmm. It's nice. It's because you get the best of both worlds. You can still have a nice lightweight head, but you get a little bit of that grit and warmth.
Cool. And what's your current rig?
I've got a couple. So for like a lightweight, just going around town, I like the little Aguilar SL 112, I think it is. It's a super lightweight cab, and I like GK heads, so I have the 800 MB Fusion. At the shop, our main tester rig there is the Trickfish stuff. They've got the bullhead, the 1K and the 0.5.
Dude, that's so good.
So I've been switching them back and forth because we have two Trickfish cabs too. We've got a 212, which is killer, and then a 2.8 on top of it, which when you put those together, it's ridiculous. And then I have an old 1969 Ampeg 810, the original flat back version before the tilt back. Dude. Original speakers, everything. It's absolutely killer. It's like my number one reference cab, and so I've been putting both of the Trickfish heads on that, and they're completely different, but they both sound so good through it. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite pedal?
A
tuner.
Yeah.
Waka waka waka.
I have a couple. I think my most used of all time is just Boss bass chorus, the CEV2.
Fuck yeah, man.
It's just a good sounding chorus, and I like to just kind of water up my tone a little bit.
I love chorus.
With
dude.
It's so versatile. With overdrive too. It sounds so good.
I use the MXR bass chorus deluxe. It's always on.
Yeah.
And I used to hate chorus so much.
Yeah.
And then I thought about, well, why do I hate it so much?
Yeah.
And it's just like, maybe it's just the way it's mixed. And then I incorporate it into the signal chains. It never turns off.
Yeah.
It just has this really cool color to it.
Yeah.
And it if you put fuzz with it.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So
and you just crank the intensity up.
Some chords.
Yeah.
Oh my
it's
god.
so bitchin'.
Yeah.
I like using the chorus a lot when I'm recording and just using it subtly, like not a lot of intensity and a slow,
just a little
wave.
Yeah.
And then almost where you don't even notice it's there, but it adds this if I A/B it while I'm in a session and shut it off, turn it on, I'm like, that sounds 20% better with it on.
It's I look at chorus like Michael McDonald, like you listen to dude, if you listen to if you do that, like the Steely Dan documentary about Asia, like the record, and then like they get to the peg and stuff. Like you hear the song without Michael McDonald on there, and then they get to Michael McDonald, it's just 20% better.
He only makes it peg.
I love the part too where like Donald Fagen and like they're sitting at the booth and they isolate that specific track, and Donald's like, "Sorry, Michael," and it's just like, "Peg." Dude, it's so good.
Dude, I had those guys, Donald Fagen and who was the other guy?
Walter Becker.
Walter Becker. Yes.
Yeah.
They came into making music once, and
Dude.
they came in in these like dirty suits,
Yep.
and this old limo,
Yep.
and this old dude driving them in the limo.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, you're part of the greatest band potentially in history, and at a time like in their time were the band, the players, the what, and are you? Is this years of drug use? Is this, I honestly, if the average person would have been like, who are these? Bums walking in, you would have never known.
But then you see the one Walter would just stack guitars on the counter, like, I'm getting that, I'm getting that.
Yeah,
Did you see his the auction?
Stuff. I just heard about it. It was a couple $1 million they raised or something.
He had some great shit. There was a 58P bass that came through CME that he owned.
Yeah.
It came with like all the documentation and stuff like that. It was gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But it was like he lived in Hawaii,
and
like it had like all of the years of that bass living in a studio in Hawaii, all the like checking and stuff from the nitro. Yeah. It was such a fucking killer bass.
Yeah.
It was so awesome. And it was that much cooler knowing that it was with Walter Becker and knowing that it was probably in a session with Michael McDonald.
Yeah. 20% price.
20%
right
better, man. Yeah.
The Scorpions came in one day to the shop, and they immediately walk in and go, "Where are your flying V's?" We had 0 flying V's.
Dude, the Sales of Sharon. Have you heard that track?
No.
We're going to play that track right now. And now we're back. It's so fucking badass, dude. It's such a good. The first time I heard that song, my brother was driving, and like I had just taken a huge rip of a bong, and he was like, "Oh, have you listened to this song before?" I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. Is this the Eye of the Tiger guy? Like, who is this?" Yeah. And he was like, "Just check this out," and he turns it on, and I just like sat in his shitty Ford Focus, just like vegging out, and then he turns it down, and I go, "What are you doing? Stop. Turn it up. This is so fucking bitchin'. It's so good. So good."
Speaking of bitchin', I was grocery shopping the other day at the local Fresh Time. I'm in the bulk section getting my granola and peanuts and stuff, and what do I hear? New York. It's everything. I'm just like immediately
Huey,
Daily
baby.
Huey.
Yeah.
Oh man, you've ruined my life. You're there wherever I go.
No, I've enhanced it, bro. I've enhanced it, dude. His new single's awesome.
Is it? I haven't heard it. I haven't heard
Can't eat, can't sleep. I'm so nervous I can't keep the beat. Dude, so good. Huey Lewis. Let's talk about Huey Lewis for 5 seconds. He's the shit. He's the king. He's funny. Awesome voice.
Yeah.
Solid band.
I think 9 out of 10 of his song titles have the word heart in it too, I've realized. He sings about the heart an awful lot.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's just got a lot of love to give. Dude, Jake, thank you so much for joining us and putting up with us for this. This is awesome. Our inaugural episode of the Bass Nerds. Couldn't be happier. I'm Mark Najjar, also known as Bass Dad.
Jody. Real quick, if people want to find you, and where do they go?
SerekBasses.com. We've got a quote form there, which is like the easiest way to get a direct line.
How do you spell Serek?
Serek. It means cheese in Polish. Yeah, little teaser there. And then Instagram. I mean, I get my Instagram inbox does get a little flooded, so that's not the quickest way to get a hold of me. Leave some comments and let us know what you like. Don't tell us what you don't like. Just tell us what you like. But if you want to get in direct touch, you can email us through the website. That's the best way.
Awesome. Well, yeah, dude, thank you so much for being the first bass dude to come through. Yeah. I don't know who we're going to have next, but we'll have someone on next.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to say, too, that if you're watching and you're listening and you have questions about basses or instruments or whatever, anything related to bass guitar, send us an email at thebassnerds@gmail.com.
That's correct. That's our working email address for now.
Thebassnerds@gmail.
That's right.
And I also want to encourage people to send like video questions and not just emails, but do what you can do.
We'll post them on here. We'll have it playing in the video format of this, and air your question too. I mean, like
we'll post you up and stuff like that. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, like, all those things. We got Facebooks, we got Instagrams, we got Gmails, all that stuff. Thanks, Jake. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. You're the best.
Peace.
Peace.